in history. At the seat of the table, a seat at the table is dedicated to those trailblazers, those change agents, community builders, those who dream and make dream makers, those who are motivational speakers, those who understand a cause and actually provide a solution for a problem, those who inspire those to grow bigger than they ever imagined into giants, those who can see the future before others can see the day. I'm speaking none other than Cora Masters Barry. How are you?
I'm doing great. And yourself, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. So good to see you again.
And thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
You know, for those who don't know, women have made every movement that has ever happened in this country a reality. Can you share how you decided to pick up the mantle and to be a part of that change, when and how?
Well, to go back to what you said a few minutes ago, it always, all the people who are around me, my good friend and mentee to some degree, Tamika Mallory, she said, you're always talking about history. I said, because history defines the present. And if you don't know where you came from, any road will take you there. You have to know whose shoulders you're standing on. You have to understand the contextual framework of what happened before you, so you won't feel as if what you're doing, as my mother used to say, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just different, but it's not new. And so in that regard, it made me think back to Ella Baker and a lot of the women of the movement. And we'll get into that a little later, but how their voices were not heard until many, many, many years later. But they were basically and primarily responsible for all the major decisions and the movements that took place, especially during SNCC. And as far as I'm concerned, I just was born into it. It's in my DNA. It's my mom. I've always had my spirit gets vexed by injustices, and it always has. It's just taken different forms. I was speaking to someone the other day, and they were talking about racism in this country. I said, the racism in this country is from, as they say, soup to nuts, from pillar to post. It's not just out there with George Floyd. It's not just housing. It's not just the disparities and the inequities and the problems that we have in our community. Is in everything. I was just recently nominated and put on the commission of Arts and Humanities for the whole nation's capital. And I mean, I swear, when I walked into it, I felt like I was in the White Citizens Council. All that millions of dollars. And I just want to know, my husband, Marion Barry, told me early on that it's always about the economics. You have to get to the economics. It's if you cannot get to the economics of the situation, you will not fix the problem. And so that's just been something, I didn't go on the commission with that intention, but seeing it and hearing it, it just became a battle. So I don't know how to define when this has ever happened. It's been like this all my life.
Yeah, but when you say SNCC, somebody think you're talking about a Snicker bar.
I'm talking about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, founded by Ella Baker, Marion Barry, Stokely Carmichael, all them good people.
Yeah, why'd they find something like that? What was the need? People don't think there's a need for Black Lives Matter. If you ask them, they wouldn't have founded it at all.
Well, my concern with today's movement is they don't understand yesterday's movement. And the need for SNCC was simply the same need that we have today with the young people out here protesting. The SCLC, King, Abernathy, and all of those, for the young people, they were too passive, they were too slow, they were too nonviolent, if you might, and they were too, they wanted to do something in a way that the young people didn't want to do. They wanted to make it faster, they wanted to make it harder, they wanted to make it deeper. So they formed this organization, but they did it with coordination and negotiations with SCLC, specifically with Martin Luther King himself. And Marion tells the story how they battled about the title. Is it going to be nonviolent? So they had two doors. They had one door that had SN, which is the Student Nonviolent, and then CC, Coordinating Committee. So one group did voter registration and one group did direct action. And they thought the voter registration was being co-opted by the Kennedys. So they wanted to be over there where they could pick up guns. So the need for SNCC, it's the same need we have here. We have our conservatives, we have people who work inside the system, we have our congressmen, our mayors, we have all these wonderful Black people, and then we have our young people in the streets pushing us to do more and do it quicker.
So that was you. So
that was me.
You say young people, but you still moving. You still put.
Yeah, I'm still moving. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I don't plan to either, not anytime soon. I'm still fighting. I might not be out on the street, but I'm in the battlefield, on the battlefield.
No, I admire that. I think the question wasn't so much were you really. I know that you are, and I had to share that with another friend of mine. I'm like, you've got to change your lens and change your station as you progress. If you can't give to the movement, then you didn't make anything of yourself during the movement. Like, you got to understand that each time there's somebody else for the street. So I get it. I love it. I love it. But that wasn't all. You elected to be a change agent, and, I don't play tennis, but I know you do. Why tennis? And tell me about the movement, because you're such a movement maker, an organizer all the time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put it in that context, because yes, I built a Southeast Tennis and Learning Center. It's on part of the community in Washington, D.C. for everybody. It's the hood. We call it a community at promise. And we built a $40-50 million facility that is state of the art, could be anywhere in the world. As a matter of fact, a lot of people think it belongs anywhere but in the hood. But at the same time, I chose tennis because I thought tennis would be a sport that the kids could have for a lifetime and go to college on scholarships with. And it happened around the time Venus and Serena had just come on the scene. So it was a possibility. I mean, I think when that was for them and I tried to build a tennis center, people was like, no, why would we do tennis? But Venus and Serena coming out of Compton, they said, well, if they can come out of Compton, they can come out of Southeast Washington. So that's why I was able to build this kind of a facility. But again, racism is everywhere. So I tell everybody, you guys think I'm in here in some kind of glory world in tennis, when I'm out here fighting racism. That is a racist sport, an elite sport. They took those girls through hell. They did all of those things. And I can tell you so many stories. And meanwhile, we have our young Black people who can't make it to the top of the game because why? They don't have the money. They don't have the training. They don't have the access. So I'm fighting with people all of the time. And I'm not the person that they particularly like in the tennis world. So in order to co-opt me, they gave me the top award, the Founders Award. They took me to San Diego and put me on the stage and gave me all these wonderful accolades and the biggest trophy I ever had in my life. I came right on back home and called them racist because it wasn't opening up the door for my kids. And so, yeah, it's everywhere.
So when you think about that, what do you see in those young children? It doesn't matter. I know your gifts aren't necessarily for the accolades or even interest that they're going to always ensure. We know that we got to kick down the door. So I'm sure you're up to that cause. But for these children, what do you see when they learn to play tennis?
Well, our theme is tennis is the hook, but education is the key. So it's actually a tennis and education facility. And if you walk in, if you go to the left, you have a whole school there. If you go to the right, you have indoor courts and workout rooms and all of that. So what I want them to do is fulfill their great promise in whatever they want to be. So we support them academically. We put a tennis racket in their hand and a book in the other hand. And we've had over hundreds of kids who have gone off to school on tennis and academic scholarships. And not one of those kids went into the tennis world. They became doctors and entrepreneurs and everything else, but they didn't pay a penny to go to college. So they have no what do you call it? Loan.
Yeah.
No, they had no debt, right.
Right. Because you put something in them so they didn't have to.
Change the trajectory of their lives. I say if we blank out that center, I promise you, and this is not hyperbole, many of those kids would either not be here today or they would be in jail. So when they walk in that door, their life changes because we do so many things. And I don't want to spend a lot of time. I'll direct you to the website and you can look at that and see what we do. And if there's anybody in the DMV and they want to come by and visit with us, we're welcome to have them. I mean, people walk in, their mouths drop, their eyes get big because it's a fabulous facility and it's in the middle of the hood and it's well taken care of and our kids are proud.
And we're all proud of you for doing this. And Vina and Serena supported. So, you have the best of the best of the best, and that's continued to be there. But being around change agents, and because I think people who haven't had the opportunity to understand a Black mayor who was in power, how angry a system, how much a system will target that particular Black man, how angry for that Black man to inspire and require that we get our fair share of contracts.
That's right. Well, I don't even know where to start with that because I just wrote a text to somebody. Something happened yesterday at John's funeral. I love Bill Clinton, but he made a comparison in his speech. He made a reference to Stokely Carmichael that he shouldn't have. And it just everybody went off the rails. I was the number one because I grew up in that era of Stokely Carmichael. And what I said about our leaders are that the white people pick our leaders. They decide which one of our leaders are going to pass the test. Then they elevate them, they give them access, they give them exposure, they pat them on the back, they sing the highs, and then they criminalize and marginalize those of us who are radical, who really are going for the economic changes, and those of us who will speak truth to power. Then, then they become Fred Hampton, they become H. Rap Brown, they become Eldridge Cleaver, they become Stokely Carmichael, who had to go into exile because the FBI had him. They become Marion Barry. When he became mayor, he changed the whole system. He threw out the test for the police and for the fire department, which he called an occupation army, got rid of the white chiefs, put in the Black chiefs, took the money, said all of the people who were going to do development had to give 33 1/3 to Black people, not minorities, not women, no diversity, Black people. Black people came to Washington from Wall Street, from New York to get some of that good old bond money that had been up to this point given to the white people. He just changed the economic trajectory in the city and empowered and enriched hundreds and hundreds of people. We've got a few Black millionaires who can say their daddy was Marion Barry, starting with Bob Johnson of BET, and I can go on and on and on. Gave him property and gave him free property to build his building and didn't charge him any taxes to do it. So I can go on. But he taught me right at the very beginning, everything has an economic element. If you can't get to the economics, then everything else will fall. You have to empower people at their very core.
So with the President Clinton saying something about Stokely Carmichael, how can he be talking about a man he doesn't know?
How can he say anything about our business? He needs to stay out of Black folks' business. If he wanted to get up there and say something about John, say something about John, but don't say nothing about Stokely because you don't know him like that. And I took umbrage because that was my leader. He's the one who took the shackles off my feet and my arms and took the blinders off my eyes and let me know that I was beautiful and Black and powerful and I could do anything. Stokely Carmichael did that. So do not marginalize him with some third-rate, fifth-level information that somebody gave you that's not accurate because you don't know the real story. So take him out of your mouth.
Drop it. He dropped the mic, right?
Yeah, just dropped the mic. I was upset on the spot when it happened.
Yeah,
I was.
So when you see a legend like John Lewis, who you've known, and I'm so glad that he had a homecoming. But what was it like when you were close to him, watching him evolve?
John was an ordinary person who did extraordinary things. So I never was, but really no one. I really can't think of too many people that I am actually in awe with of when I'm around them, even though to the world, like my good friend Maya Angelou, people like that. These are all just people. I try to teach the young people. These people that you read about in the history books that you see on calendars and on posters, they are everyday people. They went through hell just like you going through hell. Everybody did not love them in their time. King was one of the most hated people ever. His compadres didn't like him. Urban League, Whitney Young, none of them. I mean, they were all competing. People have to know their history. So these are people who, despite it all, have the courage and the will to continue on. But in their time, in real time, they were just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Simple as that. And so when I was around John, we was laughing or talking about whatever the issues were, but I never felt like, oh, I never felt that about my own husband, and he was quite a giant.
He's a true giant.
True giant.
True giant. True
Yeah.
Giant. They don't make that type. I think he and Maynard probably were the last of that genetic, maybe Coleman.
Yeah, Coleman, don't leave out Coleman Young. That's whole truth to power, empowering Black people. That was a generation of mayors that came right not long after the 1965 Voting Rights Act. We had a list of mayors in Stokes and Cleveland, Ohio, and Hatcher and Indiana and all around. And even a little later on, Mayor Washington in Chicago. Marion died on a Saturday, November 14th. And that was the week right before Thanksgiving. And every Thanksgiving, he would have these great big Thanksgiving things, turkeys and all kind of food. So they had done an interview with him prior to his death that came up on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I read the article. And in the article, the reporter asked him, well, where did you get the money? People want to know where you got the money. And Marion said, nobody want to know that but some white people, and it ain't their business. And I laughed and I said, that will be actually the last time you will ever see a Black elected official speak like that about race so honestly, because they just don't say it. They don't even use the word Black. They use people of color or diversity. I mean, we've been beat down that we can't even use our language, the language of race. The language of race is you white, we Black. That's it. I'm not a person of color, I'm Black. But Marion was able to do that, but people don't do that anymore. So I don't know where we go from here.
When we don't do that and we're at the table. What's the loss when you're at the table and you're an elected official, you represent Black people, we're hoping that Black can come out of your mouth, and you're sitting at the table and they ask, and what do you say?
Well, I see, that's why I would never run for anything. People keep trying to get me to, I'm not gonna run for anything but cover. I wouldn't last 10 minutes. I don't know how they don't use the word Black, but they don't. And I think, and to be fair, you know, the constituencies have diffused. We're not woke people as we should be. So, I mean, the moment that Marion would say things like, he would say things like, well, the Asians are taking over our neighborhoods. Oh, Marion Barry called the people Asian for the Asians. Or he'd say, you know, more Black people need to go get jobs nursing because the Filipino people are taking over all the nursing jobs. Oh, Marion mentioned the Filipino people. Wow, well, how do you operate in that environment when you can't call people what they are? So, you know, people get gun shy and they beat us down. So we gotten to the point now where we can't use the word race. We gotten to the point that if we do acknowledge that there's race involved in something, then what do they say? Oh, there they go with the race baiting. There they go with the race baiting. So then we get muted and we just get beat down into that diffused language that doesn't really tell the story. I am hoping, as a result of the George Floyd phenomena, the movement, that we don't go back and that we do return to the language of race, not negative language, not calling anybody out of their name, but calling it what it is, so that we can clearly define what the issues are and who are being affected by it. And so I don't allow people to say that our kids are at risk. I say our kids are at promise. And I do not allow people to tell me that these kids are minority kids. No, they're Black kids. And they have a lot of potential. So we're going to do something about that. And I just wish more of us would do that during this period and stay with it. Because as long as we can identify ourselves for who we are, we can always identify what the issues are and address them directly.
So when you're mentoring a Tamika Mallory, what are you saying? What are you and how are you encouraging? How are you instilling? How are you molding and shaping a young fireball like yourself?
Well, first of all, I love me some Tamika Mallory. That's my girl.
That's both.
That's
both of us.
Yeah, but she was formed and developed years ago. Her parents kept her in the movement. She used to go to Savior's Day for the Nation of Islam. She had great orientation, but every once in a while, we have to have screaming matches because, I'm like, you can't burn it down to me because you got to leave something for us to, whatever. But I think my main role with her, other than just being a friend and a supporter, is to always try to remind her of history. I always try to get her back and tell her, read about this or what about that, because she needs to understand that the battle she's fighting is not a new battle, it's just a renewed battle, and that it's been fought before.
Well, I don't know that most people, that's probably conceptually something that people wouldn't understand. Like, how do you look back? And I'm not being facetious, I'm being very honest. You have,
Read.
well, and I think even where, people would Google and they don't read the first thing that comes up, which might be an ad. So
yeah, I forgot people don't read books no more, right?
Well, we hope they read a few books. I think they're now understanding that it has a bigger role in their ability to at least address. I think you have to shape your mind. So you have to inform your mind.
I don't know. I think you're right. I think we failed. I used to always say, and I still say, that we need to be more like the Jews. You don't turn 13 and not know the history of your people. We have something at my church. We used to have rites of passage, take kids to Africa and blah, 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 blah. But we in our homes and in our schools have not reminded our children of our past and our history. And so therefore, they grow up without having that kind of a foundation. But when you talk to people like Tamika, I mean, the first thing I told her in that reference was 2 days after after Women's March, 2 days. And that was the most phenomenal march in the history of the world. When millions of people all over the world were marching, I guess because Mr. Orange got in office and everybody was, as we found out, righteously worried about it. And she was having some difficulties. And I said, you're going to need to read. And I gave her 2 or 3 things to read. And she said, why do I need to read this now? I said, because you need to understand there's nothing new under the sun. People are going to be messing with you forever. It goes with the territory. These people you see on posters, they didn't get up there without a whole lot of battle scars. People wasn't loving them. I said, if you want to be famous and loved and revered, just go on and die. The moment you die, then people will just think you just Jesus. But while you're alive, they're not going to respect you and they're not going to lift you up in a way that you deserve. It just doesn't happen like that.
So when you see that, I mean, because you're seeing this in real time, but most young women don't know the only building owned on Pennsylvania Avenue is owned by women, Black women.
My dear friend, Dorothy Hyde. That's why I was there for that day. That was a glorious day. We closed down Pennsylvania Avenue. And every Black woman and a few white ones, because Hillary Clinton was first lady at that time, she was there. But Coretta Scott King, Betty Shabazz, Susan Taylor, Cedar Lois Tucker, Camille Cosby, Gladys Knight. I can just go down the list. Everybody was there for her to cut the ribbon on that building that she purchased on the corner of 7th and Pennsylvania Avenue, the National Council of Negro Women. And she was 85 years old.
Say it again.
Did it. 85 years old. And that was the inspiration for me building my building, because I had been thinking about it and I had been praying about it, but I was scared, because you get scared when you have big ideas. And I don't know if I ever would have done it. But when I got there and saw this 85-year-old woman with a 25 million capital campaign, and I was like, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And from that point on is when I started raising the money to build the building I built, because Dr. Hyde inspired me. And many times I would tell her, you the reason I'm in all this trouble. So yeah, only building that's owned by our people, right there on 7th and Pennsylvania Avenue.
Owned by Black women.
Black women, Black women.
And Black women.
Yes. 633 Pennsylvania Avenue. Stop by.
I've been by. They're my partner in my new coloring book. We're doing a meditation color book together with the NCNW.
Okay.
That is happening. So no, it's a great organization.
I was speaking, and that I knew you've been there. I was just saying to the audience, they need to stop by, whoever's listening. Yeah.
You should go by. Now, I just wanted to share with them that Black women are
yes,
so phenomenal in unrepresented. We need to respect even more the love that they've given us.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Black women is the backbone. Dr. Height said Black women seldom do what they want to do, but they always do what they have to do. And we do what we have to do, and we make sure the men do what they have to do. We're not only by their side, we're behind their back pushing them. And nobody wants to hear that. And in the civil rights era, the Black women did a lot of the work. Ask Eleanor and Joyce Ladner and all of those. And of course, my favorite, Ella Baker. The men took the credit, had the glory, and the women did the work. That's just facts. And as a matter of fact, Reverend Laurie, at the funeral said Black women told them what to do and they did it. Those were words out of his mouth.
That's beautiful. Now, when you see a sister like Michelle Obama,
mm-hmm.
now that she, obviously, First Lady, is out, it seems as though she's continuing a voice. What is the history of Michelle Obama going to look like 20 years from now?
That's difficult to say because Michelle has no, to my knowledge, political ambitions. So she's very much involved right now with the voting, and I don't know what that looks like because I haven't gotten intimately involved in it. I just don't know. I know that you're constantly judged or evaluated by what you're doing now. And if you did something 5 years ago, that's nice, but nobody really cares. And so I don't know what her life goal is in terms of what she wants to attack, but I'm sure it's going to be something that's empowering because she has the right mindset and she has the profile and the popularity to be very influential if she chooses to do something like that.
So when you're thinking of the conversation, obviously you made a point. Black leadership needs to figure out how to say and bring Black to the table and make an ask and make sure that we are getting our percentage. Because you shared that Marion Barry brought the percentages up versus mm-hmm. just talking abstractly so that we could measure our involvement, measure our participation. What other change agents do you think need to come sit at the table so individuals can understand their mindset? Because you got a powerful couple right in your backyard.
I have a power couple. Who is that?
No, I'm just saying a powerful couple of changes.
Oh. Well, what I think right now, where we are right now, I think our young people need guidance. They don't need anybody telling them what to do, but they do need to let them know how they can be protected and also give them advice from time to time, like I do from time to time. When Tamika listens, she mostly doesn't listen to me. She just talks and tells me what she's going to do. And I said, what can I do to help? And that's the way it goes. But every once in a while, she knows there's somebody. I think we should do more intergenerational things in terms of our movements. A lot of us are not up to standing in the streets and getting tear gassed and pepper sprayed. I'm not up for that. Although if I have to be, it depends on if what it is. I'll get out there. But we're at the table and we're fighting the battles on different levels and in different places. But we're all with the same purpose. And so I think what we need is a table of elders and young people. And I think together we can really change this world. But we have to do it together. We can't be at cross purposes. I'm on the Arts Commission, and the mayor put a young lady named Natalie Hopkinson on there with me. She's a young Black woman who's got a PhD at Howard University. She has tenure and she teaches Black culture and Don't Mute DC, and she just wants to blow up the whole commission. And I was like, Natalie, not yet. Let's try this on the inside first. So it's that kind of a thing. But we have that as an option. We will call out the troops if we have to, but let's just try to change it from the inside. So it's that combination, the yin and yang between she and I, that we're really getting somewhere in this organization, because you have her who are just in your face. And I know you find it hard to believe, but I'm not that person. I know you don't think that. I don't have to be. She's there. But that is a perfect example of how the two generations work together and accomplish something. And we did more of that because we have some brilliant women of age, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, and even 90s, actually, that have a lot of experience, have a lot of knowledge, would love to share it with the young people. But the only problem I have with that is that a lot of times the older people, and not that I'm not one of them, but they get irritated with the young people. They forget that they were young. And they get upset and they were like, well, they shouldn't. I said, don't say what they shouldn't do. Just guide them. So whatever they do, they'll be safe. Leave them alone. When I was that age, I had a big old bush, had my fist up in the air, Ungawa, Black Power. Couldn't nobody tell me nothing. I got mad at my history teacher because I found out he lived in a $25,000 home and I thought he had sold out to the man. So how crazy was that? So if I could be that crazy, how am I going to be sitting here judging these young people? You gotta have a good memory if you're going to be helpful.
When you think about other change agents in your city, D.C., and then you woke up that morning and it had Black Matters, was it Boulevard or Avenue?
Black Plaza, Black Lives Matter Plaza.
You woke up.
Don't ask me. I can't tell you what I said about the mayor because I can't say it on television. But let's just say she was a BBB, a BABB. I was like, dang, that's gangster.
So now
It
you
was
got
amazing. And it's gonna stay that way. So
that was a Marion Barry move.
That was beyond Marion Barry move. I was like, gee, and not only did she do that, which I got a little, now that's where age comes in, because you know how these things can go when you're messing with the principalities of our country. Too many of our Black men and women have gone down messing with these white people. At some point, you got to figure out there's going to be some consequences, because then she put some lights on the street that night so he could dream about it. And she did 2 or 3. I said, okay, slow up. You know, don't go too far. But yeah, she was fearless. I'm proud of her.
So you enjoyed that?
I loved it. And then it was a trend. People were doing it all over the country. I think we have about 10, 15 cities now that have it, including in New York in front of Trump Plaza. Trump, whatever the name is the building is. I was thinking about Trump Plaza when I was in boxing. He had a casino there called Trump Plaza and Trump Castle. Both of them went bankrupt, of course.
When you think about your marriage and your relationship with her, how do you counsel her?
You know, well, when I said to her, be careful, she said to me, you sound like my mother. I said, because your mother and I know that there's some treacherous roads down in front of you when you do things like this, because I knew that the people around her were like, get it on. You're going to be this, and they was like, you know, like in the corner with a boxer, you know, the corner. And I know that can be dangerous because you don't let people's heads blow up too much, because then they're not looking for the pitfall. So I just tell her sometime, I told her then, be careful, kind of slow it down, pull back a little bit, give it a rest. That's a crazy man over there on 16 Pennsylvania Avenue. You don't know what he's capable of. I mean, she sent his troops back home, wouldn't pay their hotel. She just did everything. I loved it.
I'm so happy that you loved it. So when you would hang out with Maya, what do you remember about her most that young people need to know about her that they don't?
Maya Angelou was funny as heck. She had a great sense of humor. I mean, I could think of I still quote her, as a matter of fact, on stuff that nobody, you know, not one of those famous quotes that I quote her on that too. When people show you who they are, believe them. I live by that. I mean, it took me 50 years to get there after, you know, people messing over you year after year. Then now you just got to do it one time. Okay, I know who you are, I'm done. But she had a great sense of humor and she loved her people and she was very, very open. An example, my friend Julianne Melbo was president of Bennett. And I was bringing some of the kids from the center to go there and do some things. And Maya called, I was in the car and said, I hear you coming to town. I see, I'm not far, I'm almost there, because I was driving, following the van. And so she said, you coming over? I said, I will, but I can't come right now. I got to take the kids over to Dr. Melbo's because, you know, the Bennettville. She said, what kids? I said, we got about 8 kids. And she said, bring them to my home. I said, but she said, bring them. I said, bring them. I said, okay. So I took them over there and all the way there, I'm like, okay, y'all act right. Don't act like you just got out of the, off the cotton field, be polite, be respectful, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Miss Barry. So they got there, they swam in her pool and they were nice. And then she had made this homemade pound cake and this special iced tea. So one of my little girls said, Dr. Maya, I like your stuff. I sure like your stuff. And she just cracked up. I said, okay, there goes my coaching. And she sat and talked with those kids, I don't know, for hours. And it was like the kind of stuff she does that people paid her thousands of dollars to do. She just sat and talked with them. So, and then when we got ready to leave, everybody piled in the car. And then her assistant came out and got me and said, Miss Barry, Dr. Angelo wants to see you. I ran back in. I said, what's up? She gave me this antique rain stick. I don't know if you know what a rain stick is. It's something they do in Africa. It's a piece of wood and it's long and it has, you go like this and it makes sounds. It was something that a chief had given her and she gave it to me and she said, I'm giving this to you for what you do for our children. So she was just very, very, again, another ordinary person that did extraordinary things, but she loved her people and she took time with people. She wasn't on her high horses at all.
No, but how could she be among a SNCC rebel like you and knowing that you both have the same black that you're wearing and the black that you'll always take and the black that you'll represent? How could she want to do anything but love the babies that you brought by? I mean,
you sound like her. That's what she said. She loved those babies and she loved the direction that we were going with them. She came to our grand opening, did a special poem. I mean, she was my friend. I miss her.
Yeah, when you see a powerhouse like that, but you know, they say powerhouse, Cora Masters Barry, a seat at the table. When you have your seat at the table, you're always feeding our young people blackness and our black excellence. What are you going to tell these young people about the history now? Now that they're making history, what do you encourage them to do so that when they see themselves as leaders, they know what to do and what's in front of them? Because you've been with leaders, you've been married to leaders, you've been part of leadership.
Well, what they need to understand, well, one thing that's happening that did not necessarily, well, I won't say that. Things are changing as the movement is going on. You're not like waiting for some promises. There, police budgets are being reallocated. People are throwing out their old charters and coming in with stuff about hiring and opening. I mean, it's changing. It's going on. What I want them to understand is stay vigilant, because at some point this is going to die down. But the truth has got to stay there. Stay in front of it. Don't let it come back. Stay black. Stay in. But some of you got to make the transition. See, that was one of the benefits of the movement. Marion, Andy Young, John Lewis, they brought the movement into government and made the transition. Andy Young did a salute to Marion when they put the statue up and said that Marion brought the movement into the government. He brought those concepts, those strategies, those philosophies and ideologies into the government. So some of them have to stay outside and some of them have to come inside. You got to have an outside and an inside strategy.
So you've got giants, and I want to, before we go, I want to make sure that we come back to this statue. But when you think of the giants, we had John Lewis, you think of an Andy Young. Have we celebrated and informed our community on who Andy Young really is?
I think Andy Young, John Lewis, and all of those, because John Lewis, I mean, in the last 5 days, it's remarkable. They've just about made him a saint, so he's good. Andy, I think in his own world, the people, of course, obviously in his hometown, they even have a statue to him now. And he told me it was awkward for him at first, but now he likes to go down there and watch people watch it and how inspirational it is. And so I just don't know if they get, I don't think anybody gets what they do until they die. I mean, that's just been my observation. I mean, people get elevated in death that they don't get elevated in life. They just simply do not. I think what bothers me, if you want my honest opinion, and that's why I get uncomfortable doing these kind of shows, because I have a hard time with the filter. I think as much as I think they are due what they got, I don't think that the people who really need the same recognition got any. I don't think the Stokely Carmichaels got any. I don't think the Eldridge Cleavers or the, Angela Davis to some degree, but the people who were the freedom fighters who really were marginalized and criminalized by the system, I don't think they get enough. As a matter of fact, I get irritated with the fact that I'm so sick, and this is not anything derogatory, but I'm just tired of all of the movies on the civil rights movement and slavery. That's good. We got this. 12 months of slavery. Harriet Tubman. I can go down the list. Kunta Kinte. I can do all of that. What about Black Power? What about the ones who led the movement? What about the ones that told us that Black was beautiful? What about the ones who lost their lives protecting their communities? What about them? Nobody elevates them because we don't have the money to make the movies. And we want to make the movies. They ain't going, them people ain't paying for that movie. So that's what happened when what's his name did Hurricane. What's the actor's name? Huh?
Will Smith or
no, not Will Smith. Denzel Washington.
Yeah, Denzel.
That was one of his best pieces. That and Malcolm. They would not give him an award for that because of the two people he represented. But when he did some stupid movie, Training Days, where he acted like a corrupt cop, then they gave him a award. That's what white folks do. They award us for the stuff they can handle, but the stuff that they don't want to handle, they demonize us.
Jesse Jackson.
I love him. I love him. And he's another one. He should be given so much. He did so much for our people. We have a way of taking people's flaws and making it their coat to wear. Every one of us is flawed. As Marion used to say, who was a very flawed individual. I ain't doing no more than anybody else. My stuff is just more public. Okay. So that being said, Jesse ran for president. We all registered more than we ever did. I can just go on and on about Jesse, breadbasket. I love Jesse, but Jesse's not getting his just due right now. He really isn't. And it bothers me because I know what's going to happen when he leaves us. But I told somebody the other day, we need to figure out a way to just lift him up. Marion was blessed because exactly a month and a day before he died, Kathy Hughes took it upon herself to do a Marion Barry Day. And all of her radio stations all over the country, people were calling in all day, all evening, people all day. And then that evening they had a big event. And so when I was walking him down to go to the part where everybody, because before he had been in the studio all day on the phone, talking to people and hearing the accolades. And I looked at him and I said, you just attended your own funeral. He said, you're right, aren't you? I said, there's nothing that ever going to be said about you when you die that wasn't said today. So now you know what people think. And a month and a day later, he was gone. And that's exactly what happened. Whatever they said when he was dead, there was a 3-day funeral, was not one thing more than they said. Jesse needs that opportunity to attend his own funeral. He needs that opportunity for people to say to him how they appreciate what he's done for them. Black people need to be able to say to him, Jesse, thank you. He needs to hear that. That's one of those things old people say, give people their flowers while they can smell them. Well, Jesse needs a whole big flower bed. And I just think we need to figure out how to do that.
Well, I want to ask you about another Chicago icon.
Who's that, Barack?
Oh, you can talk about him. He was your neighbor for a little while.
My neighbor where?
In D.C.
He ain't my neighbor. He live over there with them white people. He still lives here. I live with the Black people. I'm over here in the At Promise community where I want to be. When I walk out my door, I see people who look like me. I ain't always happy with what they're doing, but they look like me.
So you took the time and put this statue together. What was that like? Because I saw it before it was coming. I'd get a few pictures and I'd see you with the artist and you watched it, you made sure it happened. Why?
Well, first of all, that initiative I have to give credit to was for the mayor, because that was a courageous thing. And every time I would try to give her accolades, she would say it was just the right thing to do. Well, it wasn't that easy. To put a 10-foot bronze statue of Marion Barry on Pennsylvania Avenue, a block from the White House, that no matter who's president got to ride down their parade and wave at him, that wasn't an easy thing to do, but some kind of way we got it done. It was like a very long year's funeral. It was a lot involved. The artist was brilliant and wonderful. A lot of my friends were involved. We worked on what they call, I learned more about making the statues than I will ever need in life. But the head is always called the portrait, and for the guy to work on the face until he felt, no, not till he felt, until we said, that's him. And that's what happened. I bought his his publicist, Ramon Bain, came to the studio, and she called him Piglet, and she would say, Piglet's mouth is not like that. I said, well, go, don't talk to me, talk to him. And she would go and talk to him, and he'd just be, molding and sculpting. And she said, no, a little bit here. And that happened over and over again. And then one day I just walked into his studio. I said, there he is. That's him. He said, are you sure? I said, absolutely. There's nothing else you can do. That's my husband. There's Marion Barry. So that was a long journey, but it was very, and we have videos, the making of, we're doing I'm going to get around to doing a coffee table book that shows all the various iterations and all of that. So it was difficult because it was like, I had to bring clothes and jewelry. It was gratifying, but it was also very heavy.
Yeah, well, why'd you pick up something so heavy?
Well, I promised Marion he would not be forgotten. And I feel that his legacy is something that I have a responsibility for, even though throughout his work, he did so much for so many for so long, you still have to have somebody making sure that gets acknowledged.
Still trying to understand, here's this fireball who truly was part of SNCC, married, made a promise, keeping a promise. It inspires, but why? I mean, there are things that and the only reason I ask is our community needs to hear what a queen would say, even in that moment, why you support and make sure people don't forget someone.
Well, it's not just someone, it's our history. It's the city's history. Marion represented youth, he represented elderly, he represented business people. When you remember him, you remember the history of the city. He helped the city grow. We're getting ready to do a mural, hopefully, that will call The Remaking of a City. Marion was in the inner circle, or he impacted this city for over 40 years. He was the center of it. And so you can talk about it, the neighbors can talk about it, and I promise you they talk about it. If I walk out of my house, I don't have no ego in this. I mean, people will walk up to me and say, oh, we just think you're doing such a good job, and blah, blah. And then I know what's going to be next. We loved your husband, and it's always the first job or the blah, blah, blah. But some kind of way, they got to have a place for that as an outlet. They got to be able to go somewhere and see it or have his name on something. So they say, who is Marion Barry? Oh, he's the one that did blah, blah, blah. You keep his legacy going by keeping his presence here. And people deserve that, and he deserved it.
Why don't you introduce this video of John Lewis talking about Marion Barry?
That interview was edited because he talked about him a long time. But I think what you see in that interview is a young man, a man who said as a youth, they looked for Marion's voice. They looked to Marion for guidance. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that Marion was working on his PhD in chemistry. He left the movement. He left education to go to the movement. Him and a few other people did. And that his presence in terms of being a freedom fighter was one from youth. And I don't know. I don't know. What did you ask? I forgot. What was the question?
I was just going to let you introduce this video. Why don't we take a look at this video right quick?
Okay. You can give paper.
I first met Marion Barry when he was a student at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, in about 1959. He helped hold the Nashville student movement together. He thought we should be out there and saying, in effect, that when we saw anything that was not right and fair, we had a moral obligation to speak up and to speak out. He was elected the chair of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, became the national chairman. He became our voice, our face to the American public. He emerged as a strong student leader. And during the summer of 1960, he probably was the first college student to speak at both the Democratic and Republican National Convention. He wanted to be part of an effort to help shape and mold the lives of people, and to give those who have been left out and left behind a sense of hope, a sense of optimism. If it hadn't been for Marion Barry, this unbelievable son of the South, and later one of the favorite citizens and leader of Washington, D.C., I don't know what would have happened to many young people in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Georgia, in Tennessee. He never gave up on any of us. He pushed us, he pulled us. But in spite of his background, his history, growing up very poor in rural Mississippi, a little town called Itabena, he never allowed anything to hold him back. He dreamed dreams. So I think it's fitting and appropriate for Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, to honor this man who did so much to change not just Washington, D.C., but to change America and to inspire an entire generation to stand up, to speak up, and to speak out, to get in what I call good trouble, or what Marion maybe would call necessary trouble. And I don't think we will be so lucky or so blessed to see another Marion Barry pass our way.
That always makes me smile. Doesn't he look handsome?
No doubt about it. You wouldn't pick no ugly dude.
And he didn't pick no ugly woman.
Ever. Come on now. No doubt about it. He knew what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing, always.
He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. So, Nora, I want to thank you. I think it's been a wonderful pleasure. We're going to have to come back again because there's more to be shared for those who don't know. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been wanting to meet you personally, and all of a sudden you just throw up this COVID. So I can't hang out in D.C. like I like to, because I always go by the NC and W headquarters. And a good friend of mine, Janice, is the CEO. And
Janice Mathis.
Right, and Dr. Cole, whenever she's in there, run in and fly over from Chicago, which is a little closer than Atlanta, and have fun. But I really want to thank you for coming on the seat at the table. You've been wonderful. I have to bring you and your mayor friend just so I can see how the two of you dynamically talk and share, because every time I see you, when she came by for your birthday and then see you out there, I am so proud and saw you when the homegoing for Congressman Lewis, and the love and respect and the Blackness that you still kept there. So I want to thank you so much for coming to a seat at the table. For everybody out there, know that we love and respect, and know that Cora Masters Barry must be thought of and always celebrated in DC for giving promise to children, promise to a community that she continues to keep, not only for Marion Barry, for all of those, for all of the information for the tennis center. They can go where?
They can go to RWLC at recreationwishlist.com.
Super. So you heard it from her. Please go visit. Much love to you. We'll see you soon again here at a seat at the table on Rolling Out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. So for all you change agents, this should be inspirational. Just take the life of Cora Masters Barry and just apply it. She counsels those who are in the movement today. She counsels and continues the legacy. She pours into our children. Just an example of one who has had a great seat, but continues to share her seat at the table with others, to be an inspiration, to be a change agent, to be a very huge miracle maker, and to instill a transformation for those who want to progress in our community. Her progress and her commitment to our community needs to be admired today, needs to be acknowledged today. But if nothing else, think about the Cora Masters Barry that's in your life. Be sure you say, I love you, I thank you, and we thank you all for continuing to move our community forward. You don't have to be in the streets, but you do have to be in the struggle. I'm Munson Steed, and this is A Seat at the Table. Good night.